Imagine a moment in history where one child, born from King Henry VIII and his teenage queen, shatters everything we think we know about the Tudor dynasty. In reality, Catherine Howard, Henry's fifth wife, was executed at just 19, leaving no heir and plunging England deeper into political instability. Her tragic end marked yet another scandal in a court rife with betrayal, secrecy, and the relentless ambition of a king desperate for a male successor. But what if history had taken a different turn? What if Catherine had survived long enough to give birth to a legitimate son? A single child could have rewritten the entire Tudor lineage, altering the fates of Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I, reshaping religious policy, and even shifting the balance of power in Europe. The stakes of youth, scandal, and intrigue would suddenly have far-reaching consequences. But to understand the magnitude of this alternate world, we must first return to the moment where everything could have changed. What if the one thing Henry could never resist, an heir, became Catherine Howard's unexpected shield? In reality, Catherine Howard's charm and youth could not save her from the brutal realities of Henry VIII's court. A teenage queen, she rose rapidly in prominence after marrying the aging king in 1540, captivating him with her vivacity and beauty. But her brief reign was fraught with danger, accusations of adultery, whispered rumors, and the political machinations of her enemies left her exposed. By 1542, the accusations proved fatal. Henry, already a volatile and declining monarch, physically weakened by obesity, illness, and past injuries, responded with swift fury, and Catherine was executed, leaving no legacy, no heir, and no hope of stabilizing the Tudor succession. Yet history can be bent by circumstance. Imagine a scenario in which Catherine discovers she is pregnant. Under Tudor law, even a queen accused of treason could not be executed while carrying a royal heir. A child's life, especially a potential male heir, created a legal and moral shield around her, compelling Henry and his council to postpone or even cancel her execution. The king, obsessed with securing the dynasty, would likely see the pregnancy as a miraculous reprieve, an opportunity to cement his legacy. Suddenly, Catherine's life gains immense political leverage. Her survival is no longer a question of mercy but of dynastic necessity. For Henry, the announcement of a pregnancy would ignite both hope and obsession. After decades of frustration, miscarriages, and the loss of wives, the possibility of a healthy male heir would restore a sense of purpose. Catherine transforms from a scandalous, expendable figure into an essential part of the Tudor project. Her position at court becomes untouchable, her charm now fortified by the undeniable weight of succession. The king's anger softens in the face of potential posterity, while the court scrambles to adjust. Political factions would respond immediately. Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, and his supporters, who had been temporarily weakened by Catherine's fall, would regain influence, revitalizing conservative Catholic power. Reformist nobles and clergy, including Thomas Cranmer and his allies, might find their positions threatened as Henry channels his attention towards securing the unborn prince's future. A pregnant queen, even one previously disgraced, changes the entire political landscape, forcing courtiers to navigate new alliances and rivalries. Catherine's redemption arc is sudden but believable. Previously accused of betrayal and impropriety, she is quietly restored to royal favor. Scandal is managed with discretion, rumors are suppressed, letters and accounts carefully controlled, all for the sake of the unborn prince. Henry, ever the historian of his own decisions, would reinterpret Catherine's past failings as youthful indiscretions forgiven in the light of a future heir. She becomes indispensable, her survival intertwined with the fate of the dynasty itself. By the time the pregnancy reaches its final months, Catherine Howard has evolved from a tragic figure of courtly scandal into a linchpin of Tudor continuity. The court, the factions, and even Europe itself would watch intently, aware that a single child could redirect the course of England's history. And with the birth of a royal son, England enters unfamiliar territory, a world where the succession is no longer Edward's alone, where Catherine's survival reshapes political power, religious influence, and the very future of the Tudor line. The possibility of this heir transforms Catherine's life from a story of youthful tragedy into one of strategic redemption, with consequences that would ripple far beyond her own lifetime. With a single birth, the Tudor line fractures, because two male heirs can never coexist peacefully. The arrival of Catherine Howard's son transforms England overnight. Born amid courtly whispers and guarded excitement, the child carries immense symbolic weight, a miracle heir for a king teetering on the edge of mortality. Henry VIII, long consumed by illness, injury, and paranoia, finds a renewed vigor in the presence of his new son. The king's temperament oscillates between elation and suspicion. Every glance at the child becomes a reminder of his legacy, every decision colored by the future of this infant prince. Catherine, once condemned and near death, rises in Henry's eyes to near sainthood, her youth, beauty, and now maternal role cementing her place in the Tudor dynasty. Yet the birth of a second male heir introduces a perilous complication. Edward VI, the king's first son from Jane Seymour, remains legitimate and formally recognized. Edward is older by only a few years, but his place in the line of succession is no longer unchallenged. Political factions respond immediately. Reformists, centered on the influence of figures like Archbishop Thomas Cranmer and Edward Seymour, rally behind Edward as the Protestant successor who will continue Henry's religious reforms. Meanwhile, conservative Catholics gravitate toward Catherine's son, emboldened by Norfolk's faction and the Howard family's ambitious maneuvering. England's court becomes a chessboard of alliances, each move designed to secure the young prince's futures while navigating the volatile temper of the aging king. The ripple effects extend to Mary and Elizabeth, both now even more politically fragile. Mary's Catholic hopes rise. She perceives Catherine's son as a potential ally in preserving the faith, though tempered by the Howard family's ambition. Elizabeth, long marginalized due to her Bullen heritage, finds herself increasingly isolated, resented by Catherine and cautious of a court that now revolves around a new, potent male heir. The Tudor siblings, once certain of their positions, must navigate a world now divided by competing loyalties, religious convictions, and family ambitions. As Henry VIII's health declines, the question of regency and succession becomes urgent. Edward Seymour's protectorate, which historically guided Edward VI, now faces competition from the Howards, who aggressively position Catherine's son as a central figure in court politics. A potential mini-war of the roses erupts within the royal household, as factions compete for influence over two heirs whose coexistence is inherently unstable. Advisors, nobles, and courtiers must tread carefully. A misstep could spark civil unrest or even open conflict. Henry VIII's personal preferences could decisively tip the balance. He may attempt to declare dual succession, naming Edward as sovereign heir while granting Catherine's son's secondary precedence to unite competing factions. Alternatively, renewed affection for Catherine, intensified by the birth of her son, might shift his will entirely, elevating the new prince above Edward. Every courtly whisper, every declaration of loyalty, now carries higher stakes than ever before. The children's personalities and education further complicate the scenario. Edward, serious, intellectual, and deeply Protestant, is shaped by the reformist faction's guidance. Catherine's son, nurtured by Howard ambitions, is instilled with Catholic-leaning values, a militaristic outlook, and a keen awareness of the court's factional rivalries. Even in childhood, the seeds of rivalry are sown, a tension that promises to intensify as the boys grow older. Tutors, noble sponsors, and court factions work tirelessly to mold the princes in their respective visions for England's future, creating a built-in rivalry that may explode once they reach adolescence. By the end of childhood, the political and religious landscape of England is unrecognizable. The traditional trajectory that placed Edward VI as the unchallenged heir is fractured. The balance of power shifts between reformists and conservatives, with Catherine's son as the catalyst. Alliances, rivalries, and courtly maneuvering dominate every decision, while the looming question of succession hangs over the kingdom like a storm cloud. And yet, this is only the beginning. The largest transformations lie beyond childhood. When Catherine's son comes of age, the entire Tudor world is poised to change direction. Succession disputes, religious policy, and even England's role in Europe could be reshaped by a prince who never existed in our history. A single birth, a single child, has set England on a new trajectory, one where the Tudor dynasty's future is uncertain, contested, and dramatically altered. In a kingdom built on fragile faith, two princes mean two futures, and only one can survive. The birth of Catherine Howard's son transforms the religious and political landscape of England, setting the stage for a profoundly altered Tudor era. Edward VI, historically the sole male heir, would attempt radical Protestant reforms, accelerating the dismantling of Catholic traditions and institutions. Yet, alongside him, the Howard-backed prince becomes the symbol of conservative Catholic resurgence. The royal court, split between reformists and Catholics, faces constant tension. England's religious identity, rather than solidifying under Protestantism, teeters between two competing visions, leaving the nation vulnerable to internal division and external pressure. Civil unrest becomes inevitable. France and the Holy Roman Empire, always vigilant of English politics, see opportunity in the divided succession. Diplomatic intrigue intensifies as both foreign powers attempt to sway or manipulate factions in favor of the prince who best serves their interests. Scotland, traditionally a thorn in England's side, reacts differently depending on which heir appears dominant, while potential marriage alliances shift dramatically. A Europe-wide game of influence emerges, with England's uncertain monarchy at its center. Catherine Howard, once a tragic figure of scandal, now assumes unprecedented influence as Queen Mother. If she survives Henry's death, she becomes a formidable political force, guiding her son and orchestrating court politics with the subtlety and ambition of the Howards at their peak. Her family regains unmatched power, and she carefully cultivates her son into a warrior king image, confident, charismatic, and politically shrewd, ready to assert his claim. Her survival transforms her role from victim of court intrigue to the architect of her own dynasty, reshaping both her son's life and England's destiny. The rivalry between Edward VI and Prince Howard defines the era. Several outcomes are possible: a delicate, uneasy coexistence with divided authority, Edward dying young as he did historically, leaving the Howard prince to rule, or, in the most volatile scenario, both surviving to adulthood, sparking a near-certain succession war. Each pathway carries immense consequences. Peaceful coexistence is fragile, dependent on compromise and careful navigation of court factions. A succession war, on the other hand, could mirror earlier dynastic conflicts like the Wars of the Roses, threatening the very stability of Tudor England. Elizabeth I's future is profoundly altered in this scenario. With two male heirs dominating the succession, her claim is significantly weakened. She may be married off abroad early to remove her as a threat, eliminating her chance to ascend the throne. England loses the Elizabethan Golden Age. Artistic, scientific, and naval advancements could be delayed or redirected. Colonization timelines shift, naval power stagnates, and the cultural flowering associated with her reign might never materialize. The nation's global influence diminishes, leaving a dramatically different England on the world stage. By this stage, the Tudor dynasty is unrecognizable. Religion, politics, and international diplomacy collide in a volatile mixture. England no longer progresses along the historical path of Protestant consolidation followed by Elizabethan stabilization. Instead, it navigates a treacherous dual monarchy system where every decision reverberates through factions at court and across Europe. The fragile balance of power hangs on the outcomes of two princes whose coexistence defines, and destabilizes, the kingdom itself. And yet, this is not the end. The birth of Catherine Howard's son has already altered succession, religion, and diplomacy. The next question looms: how does England itself evolve under this new Tudor dynasty, and what long-term consequences ripple through generations? The stage is set for a transformed England, one where alternate choices reshape history entirely. His survival doesn't just change the Tudors, it changes the world. With Catherine Howard's son ascending to prominence, England's trajectory veers sharply from its historical path. The Protestant Reformation, accelerated under Edward VI and cemented under Elizabeth I, faces an abrupt reversal. A Catholic monarchy under the Howard prince reshapes the religious landscape. Churches and monasteries are restored, lands seized during Henry's reforms are returned to loyal Catholics, and the influence of the Pope regains strength in English affairs. Protestant refugees flee to safer territories on the continent, while Catholic exiles return, creating a society steeped in traditional faith and more aligned with European Catholic powers. England's religious identity, once a defining feature of Elizabeth's reign, now oscillates between restoration and cautious compromise. Internationally, the balance of power shifts dramatically. Spain, rather than a rival, becomes a steadfast ally of a Catholic England, while France recalibrates its ambitions in response to the altered succession. Papal influence re-enters English politics, reshaping diplomacy and granting the monarchy a legitimacy rooted in Rome. The centuries-long Anglo-French rivalry takes a different course, with alliances and conflicts redirected by the presence of a Howard-backed prince. England's engagement with Europe becomes increasingly conservative, aligned with Catholic monarchies rather than emerging Protestant states. Naval power and colonial ambitions suffer significant delays. Without Elizabeth I, exploration slows, and figures like Sir Francis Drake, whose historical piracy against Spain strengthened England's global presence, either emerge later or not at all. English expeditions to the Americas are postponed, leaving the New World's early colonial map dominated by Spain, France, and Portugal. Trade networks, overseas colonies, and naval supremacy, so crucial to England's later imperial power, develop more slowly. The world stage itself shifts, as England's delayed influence alters the trajectory of global exploration, commerce, and empire building. Yet within England, the Howard Prince, supported by Catherine and the influential Howard family, stabilizes the monarchy in ways that Henry VIII could only have dreamed. Strong leadership, coupled with a clear line of succession, reduces internal unrest, at least temporarily. However, religious tensions remain a persistent undercurrent, a powder keg threatening periodic conflict between Protestant reformers and Catholic loyalists. England's politics are defined by careful balance, intrigue, and the constant management of competing factions, a stark contrast to the relatively unified Tudor state under Elizabeth I. The long-term consequences of this single survival ripple far beyond politics. Shakespeare's world, shaped by Elizabethan patronage, literature, and theater, might never materialize in the same way. The evolution of the English language slows, influenced by a more conservative, Catholic literary tradition. Protestantism's global spread weakens without England's early support, altering the religious map of Europe and the Americas. Even the Renaissance in England becomes more restrained, infused with conservative Catholic values rather than the innovative spirit associated with Elizabethan England. The butterfly effect of one child, Catherine Howard's son, reshapes centuries of culture, religion, and power. Ultimately, the Howard Prince's survival demonstrates the immense influence of a single life. A child once thought impossible, born into scandal and near tragedy, redirects dynasties, religions, nations, and even continents. England under his reign is unrecognizable. A kingdom reshaped, realigned, and redefined by what might have been. The world, in turn, evolves along an entirely different path, a vivid reminder that history is never fixed, and the life of one person can reverberate across generations. One heartbeat could have rewritten an empire. In reality, Catherine Howard's execution left Henry VIII without an heir from his fifth marriage, and the Tudor line continued on a path marked by upheaval, religious turmoil, and dynastic uncertainty. But imagine a world where Catherine survives and bears a son, a child who transforms the succession, reshapes Edward VI, Mary, and Elizabeth's futures, and alters the course of English history. Religion swings between Protestant reform and Catholic resurgence. Politics pivot around new power centers. England's international influence and cultural identity evolve along entirely different lines. The Howard Prince becomes both symbol and instrument of a radically new Tudor dynasty, while his mother, once condemned, wields unexpected authority as Queen Mother. History, fragile and malleable, reminds us that a single birth, a single decision, a single moment can change everything. Which Tudor what if will we uncover next?